So picture this. You're sitting on the couch, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're maybe settling in to watch a movie after just a long, totally exhausting day.
You're finally off your feet.
Exactly. And suddenly, your wrist vibrates. You look down, and there is this little glowing notification on your smartwatch telling you that you are like roughly 400 steps short of your daily goal.
Oh, and almost immediately you feel that very specific, very modern pang of guilt.
Yes.
Your brain just registers that you failed the daily test,
Yeah.
even if your body feels completely drained and genuinely ready for rest.
Right, and you're sitting there legitimately debating whether you should stand up and literally march up and down your hallway for 10 minutes.
Just pacing the house.
Yeah, just to make the digital confetti explode on the little screen. I mean, we have completely outsourced our physical intuition to an algorithm.
We really have.
But what if the number that screen is demanding from you, that rigid universal quota of 10,000 steps, what if that was never actually created by doctors?
Hey, spoiler alert, it wasn't.
Right. It wasn't established by cardiologists or exercise physiologists or human evolutionary biologists.
And yet we treat it like a biological imperative, like human anatomy was somehow hardwired to require this exact five-figure number for baseline health.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But the structural foundation of that requirement is incredibly hollow once you look past the digital interface.
So today, we are taking a magnifying glass to the most universally accepted fitness goal in the modern world.
The famous 10,000 steps?
That's the one. And our grounding source for this deep dive is a phenomenal article from June 6, 2026. It's from John Harris's Substack, which is called Proud Boomer Wellness.
Great publication.
Yeah, really good. And the piece is titled, You've Been Chasing a Made-Up Number for 60 Years.
Such a great title.
So we're going to deconstruct the actual origins of this 10,000-step myth, look at the clinical data regarding what the human body actually needs, and kind of redefine how you measure a healthy day of movement. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. Because to understand the grip this number has on our culture, we have to look at the timeline Harris lays out.
Right.
We all just assume 10,000 steps emerged from, like, a rigorous peer-reviewed study at some major research university.
Right. You assume there were lab coats involved.
Exactly. But the reality traces back to Japan in 1965. They were riding this massive cultural wave right after the 1964 Tokyo Olympics.
Oh, right, because the entire country was swept up in this huge post-Olympic fitness craze. And I was looking into the background Harris provided, and there was this Japanese clockmaker called Yamasa.
Yeah, Yamasa.
And they wanted to capitalize on that Olympic momentum, so they invented an early commercial step counter like a pedometer.
A physical mechanical pedometer.
They needed a way to market it to the general public.
They needed a brand name. And so they decided to call their new device the manpo-kei, which loosely translates to the 10,000 steps meter.
And this is the crazy part. The rationale behind choosing that specific number had absolutely zero connection to cardiovascular output or metabolic rates or human physiology at all.
None. Zero science behind it.
It was entirely aesthetic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a visual thing. The Japanese character for the number 10,000, which is pronounced man, visually resembles a person walking.
It's like a little stick figure.
Exactly. It has this little shape that looks like legs mid-stride. What's fascinating here is the sheer velocity and durability of a typographic pun.
A pun.
Literally.
But
The marketing team at Yamasa chose 10,000 because it looked good on a billboard as a nice aspirational round number and, gave consumers a definitive finish line.
so it was just an advertising campaign designed strictly to move plastic units.
That's all it was.
I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around the scale of that. It is the equivalent of a catchy 1960s cereal slogan like, silly rabbit, tricks are for kids, somehow bypassing the entire medical establishment and becoming the rigid global clinical standard for the American Heart Association for the next 60 years.
It really is wild when you frame it like that.
We built a multi-billion-dollar wearable tech ecosystem on top of a visual pun. But wait, if it was just a 1960s ad campaign, how did no one catch this for 6 decades? Why did the entire fitness industry just accept it as gospel?
Well, because the fitness tech industry thrives on simple, easily digestible metrics.
Right.
When those old mechanical pedometers evolved into the highly sophisticated smartwatches we wear today, software engineers just hard-coded that legacy number as the unchangeable default setting.
Because it was already in the culture.
Exactly. Nuance and physiological variation, they don't sell app subscriptions. A neat, universal 10,000-step ring provides a very clear, satisfying user interface.
But the moment you recognize that the foundation of this metric is a mid-century advertising gimmick, it demands a clinical stress test, right?
Absolutely.
And when actual medical researchers finally stripped away the marketing and put the human body's response to step counts under a microscope, the results completely fractured the 10,000-step mandate.
They really did.
Harris cites a major 2019 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine, and they specifically tracked older women to find the actual dose-response relationship between daily steps and mortality rates.
Right. And the researchers in that JAMA study, they weren't looking for a marketing slogan. They were looking for biological thresholds,
Real numbers.
real data. They wanted to know at what exact point the cardiovascular system actually registers a meaningful defense against all-cause mortality.
And the number wasn't 10,000.
No. The data revealed that significant life-altering reductions in mortality actually began at just 4,400 steps per day.
Wait, 4,400?
Yep.
That is less than half of the cultural mandate we've been punishing ourselves with.
Less than half.
And I read through the data Harris pulled on the upper limits of that study, too. The benefits didn't just scale linearly into infinity. They saw a hard plateau at roughly 7,500 steps.
And that plateau is the most crucial finding in that study.
Really? Why?
Because taking 12,000 steps did not make those women mathematically more protected from mortality than 7,500 steps did. The biological returns sharply diminish after that point.
I want to dig into the actual mechanism of that plateau because it runs counter to how we usually think about exercise.
How do you mean?
Well, we tend to view the body as an engine, right? Like,
Yeah.
the more fuel you burn and the longer you rev it, the stronger it gets. So why does the cardiovascular system simply stop rewarding the extra effort after 7,500 steps for that demographic?
It's a great question. A better mechanical analogy for the vascular system in this context is actually a dry garden sponge.
Okay, a sponge.
Yeah. When a person is completely sedentary, their blood vessels become somewhat rigid, so the sponge is bone dry.
Right.
When you initiate movement and hit that 4,400 step mark, the increased blood flow creates shear stress along the lining of your arteries. That lining is called the endothelium,
Got it.
and this shear stress forces the release of nitric oxide, which dilates and softens the blood vessels.
Oh, I see. So you are basically running the dry sponge under the faucet. It rapidly rehydrates and regains its elasticity.
Exactly, the mechanism. And by the time that specific demographic hits 7,500 steps, the sponge is fully saturated.
Wow.
The endothelial cells have produced optimal levels of nitric oxide, so walking an additional 5,000 steps does not make the sponge any wetter or the arteries any more elastic for that day.
Because it's already full.
Right. The physiological requirement for baseline vascular health has already been fulfilled.
That biological ceiling completely changes the paradigm.
It does.
But to be fair, that JAMA study focused specifically on older women. Harris also unpacks a much broader 2021 study from The Lancet Public Health, which was this huge meta-analysis covering tens of thousands of people across multiple age groups and demographics.
Yeah, what did they find?
Well, they found the optimal sweet spot for adults over 60 was between 6,000 and 8,000 steps.
Okay, slightly higher, but still well under 10,000. And for younger adults, the data showed the optimal range sitting higher, between 8,000 and 10,000 steps per day.
So what does this all mean? Wait, let me challenge the premise here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If The Lancet confirms that younger adults see benefits up to 10,000 steps, didn't the younger adults see benefits up to 10,000 steps? Didn't the Yamasa marketing team kind of just accidentally throw a dart in the dark and hit a bullseye for a massive chunk of the population?
Well, they managed to hit the upper boundary of a demographic spectrum, yes. But the critical distinction in the Lancet study is the concept of a range rather than a binary threshold.
A range.
Exactly. A younger adult taking 8,000 steps is already capturing the vast majority of the physiological benefit. Pushing from 8,000 to 10,000 yields a very, very slight incremental reduction in risk.
So we are interpreting a biological spectrum as a pass-fail grade.
That's exactly the problem.
Like if my smartwatch says I'm at 9,200 steps, my blood vessels are fully saturated, my cardiovascular system is healthy, but the software treats me like I scored a 0 because that little digital circle didn't close.
Right. The software grading system is basically a mathematical trap. It completely ignores the biological reality of recovery, your daily cognitive stress, and varying metabolic needs.
We aren't robots.
No, we aren't.
No.
Our bodies do not run on a rigid 24-hour reset clock. but the algorithm on your wrist demands that you pretend they do.
Which pulls us right into the psychological fallout of this entire phenomenon, because Harris refers to this dynamic as the gamified anxiety loop.
Oh, the anxiety loop is so real.
It is. Human beings are deeply wired to crave round numbers and clear finish lines. And the wearable tech industry has essentially weaponized our intrinsic desire for task completion.
Because we are operating against our own neurochemistry here.
How so?
Well, when you see a closed ring or an animation on your device, your brain literally releases a hit of dopamine.
Oh, like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. It provides an immediate manufactured sense of productivity. The tech companies understand that dopamine loops drive daily active user engagement.
But the shadow side of that dopamine hit is the massive spike in cortisol, the stress hormone, when you fall short.
Right.
Harris highlighted this highly revealing comment from a reader named Joe Jansen on his Substack. And Joe doesn't own a car, has a young, really energetic dog, and walks everywhere.
Sounds like a great lifestyle.
Yeah, walking was a foundational, joyful part of their life. It was therapy. But then Joe started tracking their steps to hit a quota.
And that changes everything. The introduction of the external quota fundamentally altered the psychological experience of the activity.
Completely. Joe wrote that they found themselves pacing their kitchen in the dark at 10:30 at night just to make the watch stop judging them.
Oh, man.
They let a device turn an intrinsically joyful activity into a stressful, mandated chore.
You know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the mass displacement of internal body awareness by external algorithms.
That's a great way to put it.
Joe experienced the classic shift from intrinsic motivation, which is, walking because the body feels good and the fresh air is pleasant, to extrinsic motivation, which is walking strictly to avoid a digital penalty.
Pacing the kitchen at 10:30 at night is the physiological equivalent of cramming for a final exam at 3-4 in the morning.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Like, you are technically logging the hours, but your brain is too exhausted to retain the information. And in the kitchen scenario, you are technically logging the steps, but you are flooding your nervous system with cortisol.
And you're loading your joints at an hour when your biological circadian rhythm is begging for cellular repair and sleep.
You are completely inverting the health benefit.
Entirely. A silicon chip strapped to your wrist does not know you slept 4 hours last night. It doesn't factor in the degradation of your knee cartilage or the immense cognitive load you carried at work that day.
It just knows a number.
Right. It only knows a single binary command.
Yeah.
Number must go up. When you subordinate your physical intuition to a crude mathematical quota, you rapidly drain your finite reserves of daily motivation.
And spoiler alert on Joe Jansen's story, Joe finally took the tracker off, the anxiety vanished, and the joy of walking returned.
Which is exactly what should happen.
Now, I understand the danger of the anxiety loop, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment here.
Okay, let's hear it.
We live in a society where a massive portion of the population is dangerously sedentary.
Very true.
So isn't gamification supposed to be good? It gets people off the couch, right? If a buzzing watch guilt trips someone into taking a 2-mile walk they otherwise would have spent on the couch, isn't that extrinsic motivation a net positive for public health?
In a short-term, vacuum-sealed scenario, yes, any movement is better than no movement.
Right.
But the broader literature on behavioral psychology shows that punitive extrinsic motivation has a terrible shelf life.
Punitive meaning doing it just to avoid the guilt.
Exactly. If your primary catalyst for exercise is avoiding the guilt of an incomplete ring on a screen, you are building a relationship with movement rooted entirely in resentment.
Oh, wow. It becomes like a daily tax you have to pay to a piece of plastic.
Precisely. And eventually, the human brain rejects the tax. You will simply take the watch off, put it in a drawer, and retreat permanently to the couch.
Because it's exhausting.
Right. Sustainable, lifelong fitness requires a positive feedback loop with your own physical capability, not blind obedience to a default factory setting.
So if we reject the 10,000-step factory setting and we strip away the pass-fail gamification, we are left needing a highly functional replacement for how we actually measure our movement.
And Harris outlines a much more pragmatic, biologically sound approach.
Yeah, his primary rule is that consistency beats heroic volume.
Always. The human body responds to frequency much better than it responds to acute, massive trauma.
Right. Harris argues that a 20-minute walk every single day is vastly superior to a massive, heroic 15,000-step hike on a Saturday, followed by like 5 days of complete immobility on the couch.
And this ties directly back to the vascular shear stress mechanism we broke down earlier.
The dry sponge.
The dry sponge. Your endothelium needs that regular daily flushing to maintain its elasticity and nitric oxide production. You cannot bank cardiovascular health on a Sunday to cover your sedentary behavior on a Wednesday.
The body doesn't work like a savings account.
Exactly. The biological half-life of that adaptation is just too short.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Harris insists that the pace of that consistent daily movement matters immensely.
This is huge.
He argues there is a profound physiological difference between a brisk, purposeful walk and simply shuffling around a grocery store for an hour. But I want to push back on this. If I am wandering around a big box hardware store for 90 minutes, carrying heavy bags, I am exhausted by the end of it. My feet hurt, I am burning baseline calories. Why doesn't that provide the exact same health stimulus as a concentrated 20-minute power walk?
This raises an important question about the crucial difference between accumulating physical fatigue and actually triggering cardiovascular adaptation.
Okay, break that down for me.
When you shuffle around a hardware store for 90 minutes, you are loading your joints, taxing your postural muscles, and burning calories.
Right.
That makes you physically tired. But you're not demanding a significantly increased cardiac output from your heart muscle.
So I am putting miles on the tires, but I am not actually revving the engine past its baseline idle.
That is the exact mechanical distinction. To trigger real cardiovascular adaptation, to strengthen the left ventricle of your heart and increase your VO2 max, you have to create a temporary oxygen demand that your body struggles to meet.
Which you don't get looking at paint swatches.
Right. A brisk, purposeful walk where you are actively pumping your arms and breathing heavily that forces your heart to stretch and contract more forcefully to deliver oxygenated blood. It increases your stroke volume.
So shuffling down the frozen food aisle simply does not cross the physiological threshold required to force the heart to upgrade its pumping capacity.
No. You are providing the signal of duration, but you are missing the signal of exertion. Both have value, but only one builds a resilient cardiovascular engine.
That makes so much sense.
And Harris points out a massive blind spot in this entire conversation regarding how we define a healthy body. If all you do is track steps, even brisk, purposeful steps, you're ignoring the other critical pillars of aging well.
Right, and he dives deeply into this limitation in his book, Not Done Yet. We treat the pedometer as a proxy for total fitness, but walking, no matter how fast you go, does virtually nothing to halt sarcopenia.
And sarcopenia is the age-related loss of muscle mass.
Right.
Walking is incredible for the body's plumbing. It clears the vascular system, but it does not preserve the structural integrity of the house.
I like that.
As we age, we rapidly lose fast-twitch muscle fibers and bone density. You absolutely need dedicated resistance training to maintain that structural integrity.
Because a smartwatch tracking your steps won't buzz to warn you that your grip strength is declining?
Nope.
Or that your hip flexors are losing their range of motion?
Exactly. Walking also will not train your central nervous system to catch you when you trip over a curb.
So true.
You need proprioceptive challenges, dedicated balance work to maintain your spatial awareness, and you need flexibility routines to maintain the mobility required to tie your shoes or reach a high shelf.
Right, walking is the foundational slab of the house, but you cannot live in a house with no walls or roof.
Beautifully put.
We really have to build a complete picture of what fit actually looks like, rather than just outsourcing our definition of health to the easiest metric a microchip can measure. So to distill all the core findings for you today, the 10,000-step rule is a ghost. It is a 1965 marketing slogan built on a Japanese visual pun. It is not a medical law.
It really isn't. And the clinical data from Jamie and the Lancet clearly demonstrates that cardiovascular benefits plateau much earlier than the culture suggests.
Usually between 4,000 and 8,000 steps for most adults.
Right. You do not need to hit a magic 5-figure threshold to radically improve your longevity.
Walk your own number. Prioritize a brisk, purposeful pace over mindless accumulation, and recognize that true functional health requires strength, flexibility, and balance, not just a high daily step down.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge that builds on the psychology of everything Harris wrote.
Because the behavioral shift is the hardest part.
It really is. We spend so much time allowing glowing screens to dictate whether we had a good or bad day of movement. What would happen if you took your smartwatch off, put it in a drawer, and left it there for an entire week?
That's a bold challenge.
If you stripped away the digital confetti, the vibrating alerts, and the gamified anxiety loops, how would you actually gauge your own health? Could you learn to tune back into your body's internal signals?
The feeling of deep oxygen in your lungs.
Exactly. Your natural resting energy levels, the actual honest fatigue in your muscles.
Right.
You might just find that without the algorithm shouting at you, you already know exactly what your body needs.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Go enjoy your movement today entirely on your own terms.